Good evening, everybody. Thank you very, very much for coming tonight. For those of you, which I think is actually most of you who don't know me, my name is Nicholas Chapman, and I'm, for my sins, the Managing Director of Holy Trinity Publications, which in turn is the publishing house of Holy Trinity Monastery in Jordanville, New York. And we are proud of a publishing tradition that goes back almost 400 years to Pachayev in Western Ukraine. And we are publishing now mostly in the English language, and we're publishing books under two imprints. The traditional one of the monastery is the Print Shop of St. Job of Pachayev, or PSJP, which is reflecting the facts that the monastery used to do the whole 9 yards of printing, binding, sewing, everything as far as books was concerned. And we're carrying on that heritage in terms of the spiritual legacy of the monastery. The monastery also has a seminary, Holy Trinity Seminary, and so we have another imprint, which is Holy Trinity Seminary Press, under which Dr. Saliba's book has been published, which, as the name might imply, is a more academic imprint. And I'd like to particularly acknowledge with me today Father Michael Pabuk, who's the Director of Development at our seminary. And I also have with me my wife Nina back there, who I'm supposedly also her boss, although most people in the office doubt this. And she's our editorial and production manager, and Timothy Zielinski, who's working in sales and marketing as an assistant to our marketing director, who can't be here because he's coming to Boston tomorrow, where we have a big academic conference starting on Thursday of Slavic Studies, which Dr. Saliba's book will feature prominently. I'm going to briefly ask Father Tom Zane and John to say a few words, and then we're going to have a conversation with Dr. Saliba, and then after that we need to make sure this table isn't bearing the burden that it's currently bearing of the weight of all of these books, which hopefully Dr. Saliba will be happy to sign as well, and then there'll be some food and an opportunity to mix and mingle. So without more ado, Father Thomas.
Thank you, Sayed. I just first of all want to relay the greetings of His Eminence Metropolitan Saba, who asked me to greet you and to congratulate you on the new book. I was with him yesterday and told him I would be coming, and to greet Nicholas also, who he knows for a long time. And just to say, when Najib first started talking about this book, and I asked me who can publish it, I thought of Nicholas and Jordanville, because they do a lot of historical things with regard to Russia and the Russian Empire and Russian church history and so on and so forth. So I thought that was a perfect fit, and I connected the two of them, and here we are. How many years later? I'm not sure. 2, 3. So congratulations.
Thank you.
And I forgot to mention, of course, that Father Tom wrote a foreword, which is a very nice addition to the book.
Thank you very much.
Welcome, everybody. It's a real personal joy to be able to welcome you all here. Najib Philip bought this house, but he never visited. So with you here today, I feel always his presence, and so it's a particular joy for me to.
Thank you, Sayyidina.
So I think for this part of proceedings, we're trying to talk as close as possible to these microphones, so if I seem at a slightly strange angle, forgive me. So, Dr. Saliba, I'm sure that many people here know you much better than I do, but please tell, for those of us who don't know you so well, tell us a little bit about yourself, where your life began and where you've spent your life, and what your life's work has been.
Well, thank you very much. I was born in a mountain village in Lebanon, Abu Mizan. And I was the fifth child born to Elias and Saliba. Abu Mizan was owned by Saint Elias Monastery in Schweir. people of Abu Mizan bought their land or got land from the monastery. We call it in Arabic waqf land, land that is specially for the monastery. The people who occupied the land worked the land, raised crops, and shared the crops with the monastery. This is how the people made their life until the 1950s. From the 1950s on, the monastery began to sell the land to the people who occupied it. So the old life is gone. As far as education is concerned, we had a priest that came from the monastery to Abu Mizan to teach school. He walked from the monastery to Abu Mizan about an hour and a half. And before I forget it, later on, after the school, let us say, ended in Abu Mizan, we walked to Horshwire, to a missionary school. We attended missionary school from England. And we walked every day, and there was myself and other people from Abu Mizan going to the same school. We walked about 3 hours a day, more than that, to attend school and go back. And my friend Wahib from Abu Mizan, he is my life friend. So we and his brother, 3 of us, used to walk together, back and forth every day. I don't have a long speech, but I am ready to talk about after Lebanon, actually. I decided to come to the United States for undergraduate and graduate work, because in Lebanon, I took a high school only, and the school that the teachers were mixed, like a United Nations sometimes. I had Palestinian teachers after 1948, when Israel was created. Many Palestinians fled, and some of them came to Lebanon, and some of them taught in our school. So I took high school only, and after high school, I taught for 3 years in Lebanon, elementary school, English, Arabic. Finally, I left Lebanon and went to work for Aramco in Saudi Arabia. Aramco, the Arabian American oil company, was hiring a mixture of employees. There were Lebanese, there were Syrians, there were Palestinians, there were Americans, there were Turks, like a United Nations. So after high school, after teaching in Lebanon 3 years, I worked for 3 years with Aramco. In Saudi Arabia, I decided to come to Lebanon to the United States for university work. First of all, I attended Miami University of Ohio, near Cincinnati. It was a good school of liberal arts and business. I stayed 4 years in Miami University of Ohio. After that, I graduated and joined the University of Michigan, where I got my master's and my doctorate in modern Middle East history, or modern and medieval Middle East history. In Michigan, you have to have 4 fields. So I took modern Middle East history, medieval Middle East history, American foreign policy, and other topics. I graduated from Michigan in 1964. After that, I found work at Worcester State College. It was a college at that time. Then it became a university, Worcester State University, where I taught for 50 years, from 1971 until about 3 years ago. I retired about 3 years ago. I never missed a class. Thank God for good health. Maybe the walking from Abu Mizan to Dur Shwaya gave us some stamina.
Yes. Yes. And in that time, as well as studying, I mean, we're here to celebrate the publication of a new book, but I understand that this is not the first book that you've written and had published. So tell us about one or two of the others.
Actually, this is the third.
Mm-hmm.
The first book was about emigration from Greater Syria to the United States and other countries. I dealt with causes of emigration and what did the immigrants do, etc. So this was emigration from, it is out of print now.
Mm-hmm.
The second one was broken promises and White House meetings. I co-authored it with my late brother, Philip, Metropolitan Philip. I dealt with American attitude toward the Palestinian refugees, which we still have currently. And my brother talked about his experiences meeting with different American presidents about resolving the Palestinian problem. From 1948 to the present, the Palestinians are living in camps. And we all know what is happening nowadays in Palestine, in Lebanon, in Syria. So I didn't prepare a long speech, but I am ready to discuss whatever questions also you may have.
But and the book we have here tonight, what was the train of thought that you had that led to this book? And because it's as I said, it's an achievement to produce even one book at any time, but to produce another book at this time in your life is tremendous.
Well, one motive was, in Lebanon we have many missionaries who came and established schools, and we have The French were first. English, American, and Russian were last. The French came in and started to build schools in the 16th century. 16th century. They established schools, they established orphanages, and also they came with the motivation of converting students to Catholicism. Teach French. They didn't teach Arabic, or if they taught Arabic, it was second or third language. English were the same, basically. They focused on English. They capitalized on English. The American University of Beirut, for example, taught in Arabic at first. It introduced Arabic. Arabic was the language of teaching. Then they changed their mind and shifted to English. The Russians came last, 1882. They established, well, the reason why the Russians came last was the loss of many Arabs to foreign language, to foreign missionaries. They came to convert people to their religious sect. The French wanted to convert them to Catholicism. English wanted to convert them to Lutheranism or any Protestant branch. Maronites, Lebanon is a multi-sect country. We have Maronites, we have Lutherans, we have Melkites, Catholic, and each they competed to convert the Lebanese people to their own sect. Maronites were beyond reach. Catholics were the same. The Jewish population of Lebanon at the time was the same, were the same. So they had a good success. They succeeded in converting some people, especially Orthodox. And when they found out that Maronites were beyond reach, Melkites were beyond reach, Catholics were beyond reach, Jews were beyond reached, they focused on the Orthodox. The Orthodox were the majority sect in all Greater Syria. And when I speak about the Greater Syria here, I am speaking of Syria before it was divided by the French and the British after World War I in the Treaty of Paris. So news began to come to Russia that the Orthodox are being turned into being converted into other sects. And the Orthodox of Russia asked the Russian government to send a mission to Jerusalem, an Orthodox mission to Jerusalem. And this occurred in the late 1840s, and early 1850s. So the Tsar studied the issue and decided to open a Russian community in Palestine. First, we have the establishment of a Russian community in Palestine. And then in 1882, we have the establishment of the Russian Imperial organization, Russian Imperial School in 1882. Tsar Alexander III agreed, and a constitution was drawn by a person known as Sergius, and it was opened in 1882 in Palestine. It taught Arabic. This was a very important step. It taught in Arabic. And there were other foreign languages, English, French, maybe. But like the AUB, at first, the Russians wanted to teach the national language and continued, unlike Americans who shifted to English, the Russians continued to capitalize on Arabic.
So both the Arabic and the Christian culture was preserved by the Russians' action.
Oh yeah, the traditions of the country were not to be attacked or any changed. They wanted to teach the national language, even Russian. They taught Russian, but Russian took third place in the institution. Third place after Arabic. Arabic came first. Math came second. Russian came third. And it continued to be de-emphasized, let us say. They took the position that the national traditions were not to be de-emphasized. And this is very important. When Arab nationalism appeared over there, some scholars, Syrian scholars, took the position that the fact that Russian schools revived Arabic, capitalized on Arabic, this was a very important step in the rise of national awareness and Arab nationalism. Even Sati al-Husri, who was a Syrian Arab nationalist, claimed that we owe it to the Russians to revive the Arabic, to begin the movement toward unity, Arab unity and Arab nationalism. Sati al-Husri, a Muslim writer, admitted that the Russians did us an important service by reviving Arabic.
And this is history, but it is history that has relevance to the present time.
Of course.
And perhaps both you and Father Tom could say a little bit about the relevance of this to the times we live in now.
Well, it's very important. I mean, this started also what we call the Arab Renaissance. And we have the rise of a group of Arab writers that admitted that this is the beginning of the Arabic Renaissance.
With poetry and many other things.
Yes. Arab nationalist writers were a product of this Renaissance revival.
And just to add in modern terms to it, has implications geopolitically to this day. The role Russia, the interest Russia has in the Middle East continues to this day. They started as coming to protect the Orthodox Christians.
Thank you.
But it expanded, and we see much of to understand the conflict today, the geopolitical conflict, and the players in the Middle East. It's important to understand this history and the role they played to help us better understand the conflict and the influence different groups have in that part of the world.
And if somebody will buy this book tonight and will take it home and read it, is there one particular thing you would hope that they would take away from having read the book? Or are there several things?
Well, I think there are several things that may take by reading this book.
Mm-hmm.
One thing is the fact that there are many views about the Middle East, let us say. One view would be the difference, let us say, between the Russian schools and other missionary schools. The Russians, as I said, capitalized on the national language, and they took the interest of the people themselves as a country, as a national country, into consideration. National traditions were not to be weakened, and hence their capitalization on Arabic. So the non-Russian missionaries were mad at the Russians. Why? Because they took other students from them. How did they do it? Well, they focused on nationalism. They taught Arabic. They didn't teach loyalty to Russia, for example. Arabic came first. Communication in Arabic came first. Writing Arabic came first. Russian schools were free. totally free. Even clothing was, every student who attended Russian schools was given 2 suits per year. And everything else was free. No foreign schools taught its students, or treated its students, I should say, the way the Russians treated their students. Pencils, papers, and $6 per month for every student. And yet, foreign missionaries, foreign non-Russian missionaries, accused the Russians of imperialism. Imperialism. So this was one cause for me to write this book, to compare and to state that there are other viewpoints other than the viewpoints of the French, the English, and the Americans after they shifted to English. There are other viewpoints. And I researched the issue, whether, the Russians are actually imperialists, or what are their motives? I found only one. I researched Arabic writers and English writers, French writers. There was one only author who claimed that the Russians would take over later on. At the right time, the Russians would take over. But there was no evidence to what he claimed, to what the author claimed. Not at all. No evidence to what he was saying. He said the Russians will take over without any evidence. And the Russians didn't take over. The problem is that World War I, Russian schools, for example, were a special type of schools. They were not for exploitation. No foreign missionary school treated its students as the Russians did. And they built schools all over Greater Syria. Russians focused on Palestine at first. They built schools in Palestine at first. Then, in about 1895, they began to build schools all over in Greater Syria. In Lebanon, they built about 40 schools. Michael Naimi, we call him in Arabic Mikhail Naimi, from my part of the country over there, Baskinta, graduated from the Russian school in Baskinta, which is still open for tourists nowadays. and went to Russia. They sent him to Russia because the Russian students, not the Russian students, students who studied in Russian schools and graduated from Russian schools, the society, the Imperial Palestinian Society, Russian Palestinian Society, sent them to Russia free of charge to study higher than high school, for example, or the seminar. Russians, they called the seminar in Nazareth, the seminar of the Russian seminar of Nazareth. There was another school also like it in Palestine, Beit Jala. It was like the Russian seminar of Nazareth. The Russian seminar of Nazareth was for boys. The Russian seminar of Beit Jala was for girls. The Russians did not have any differentiation, let us say, between boys and girls. They practiced co-education. Boys and girls attended the same schools. And this is another difference between Russian schools and other missionary schools. Russian schools were co-educational. And Russian schools introduced secularism into Greater Syria. This helped later on in calling for secularism in the Arab world.
Thank you very much indeed. And as I've said already, it's a great achievement to publish a book at any age, and I think this is a particularly remarkable achievement, and I think perhaps a round of applause might actually be appropriate.
Thank you.